The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is the Journey Radio Show, and I'm your host, Jen Cruz. We're showing up as the She-Squatchers like we do every week. I've got my trusty teammates on the line. I've got Jenna Grover. Hi, Jenna.
Hello, everybody.
And Tammy Trikel.
Hi, everyone.
We have an exciting guest for you tonight, somebody that we met in person when we went to the Michigan Bigfoot Conference last summer. We've got Erick with us tonight. Hi, Erick. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, ladies. How are you? It's great to see you again.
Good. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. Come out.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been about 6 months since we saw each other in person.
It has been that long.
July, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there for barely minutes when I made a concerted effort to get over to you guys' table. And Tammy met me at the table. And like within 30 seconds, we were walking off arm in arm. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a great day. and in less than 2 minutes, I was already buying her first drink, Squatch GQ energy drink.
Were you the one who bought us those drinks?
I did. Yes, I did.
They just appeared and said somebody bought us this, and I was like, oh yay.
They were good. I like that energy drink.
I did too. It tasted like sweet tarts.
Mm-hmm.
You were the one that said it tasted like sweet tarts. I remember somebody kept saying it tastes like sweet tarts, and I was thinking, who did that?
Is that how I sounded? It tastes like sweet tarts.
Tastes like sweet tarts.
Well, thank you for buying us a drink.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad you could join us tonight. I actually didn't attempt to say your last name because I didn't dare.
Well, it's easier than it looks. It's Szilagyi. So Szilagyi.
Erick Szilagyi. It doesn't look like it's spelled like that at all.
No. Good old Hungarian name. I'm told that in the old country, I actually come from royalty. So.
Well, where's your crown? Put it on.
Go claim those riches.
Yeah, I don't know that I buy it, but at least that's what I'm told. So.
I supposedly come from royalty
she's got a
too. Any chance I get to wear my tiara, I'm gonna wear it.
Yeah, I don't have a tiara.
Jenna is so jealous right now.
Had I known we were going to be wearing tiaras, I would have brought a couple of big ones. I mean, Jenna, have you seen my tiaras? Oh, it's a good time. Sorry.
I even have a tiara. Why didn't we have this conversation? I could have brought my tiara.
Next time.
You guys have you have a male guest on tonight, right?
Oh yeah.
What about your tiara?
Do you have a tiara?
Kind of emasculating. No, I don't have it. I don't have a tiara.
Maybe you need to get yourself a tiara.
Well, no, he needs a crown.
I need a crown. That's what I need.
Right. Yeah. All right. Just so you don't all feel bad, I'll take mine off.
Thank you. I was feeling tiara envy.
Were you? I knew it. I knew that prop was going to come in handy one of these days. I just knew it. Anyway.
Jenna, you look really hot over there that you're just fanning yourself. I didn't mean that in a weird way. I mean just fanning yourself.
Jenna,
oddly.
No. Again. I'm kidding. No, I am actually at my mother's house. I'm on my phone. So everybody, thank you for bearing with. I may be lagging a little bit, but yes, I'm very warm. My mother likes to keep a hot house.
And I like it just the opposite. 68, 67, 68. I'm hot-blooded.
Perfect. That's
hot-blooded.
Not saying. I'm putting myself on mute.
That's the Goldilocks zone for me. I'm telling you right now. My nickname is Goldilocks because I have a temperature zone of comfort, and it's very small. 67, 68, 69, 66 is okay too. Getting over that, nope.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, of course, we're here to talk about Bigfoot and paranormal and cryptids and whatever stuff you want to chat about on those ranges tonight. But, Bigfoot is my favorite at this point in time in my life. So how do you come to be interested in Bigfoot?
I mean, it's super cliche, and everybody that you talk to that's of our age is always going to go back to 1977 and In Search Of. So the first time I saw the Patterson Gimlin film with Leonard Nimoy doing his narration behind it, I was like, oh my God. So that was the impetus for me getting into Bigfoot. And, I was already into UFOs from about the age of 5, and I've talked about this before. It's just really strange for me I don't know where I got that crazy desire to know about UFOs at that early of an age. But not far behind that was Bigfoot, and they've stayed with me my whole life. When I saw her walking across that sandbar, and it just was completely organic to me. There was nothing that I saw that was like, nah. My gut, even at that age, told me what I was looking at was something that was alive and walking. I've never been one, and I've even tried to scrutinize my own belief in it by looking at it, and it's like, well, could that be a suit? And man, with technology, the way technology is going now, with the image stabilizations and all the different things that they can do to that film, bringing out more detail in it, it stands the test of time. It stands up to the scrutiny. And, even this most recent one, I think was, I forget what the show is. Proof is Out There, I think it is. Just about a month ago, they had the image stabilization and other kind of AI enhancements to the film where you can actually see her toes flex up as she's going to take her step. And you can even see her butt crack, where all these people used to say, oh, that's a seam, like the seam to the costume. Now you can literally see that it's her butt crack. And so it's like the gift that keeps on giving for me. Every time I see it, it's just more and more awesome. So, and, I started doing the show and talking to people, and I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, I got really fed up with just what we were being spoon fed, like on TV shows and, the different, and I love those shows and I still watch them even in repeat. And I even go on to like Discovery Plus and watch them on there. But they didn't really do the service that I was looking for as far as getting more and more information. Started doing more of a deep dive, and man, I don't come up with anything that makes me want to kind of back off and go, yeah, I'm going to wait until something better comes out. Because, I mean, there's just so much good stuff out there. You got to weed through a lot of bull crap, but there's a lot of really good stuff out there too. So.
Awesome.
Well, you guys, that's my Skype just randomly shutting off on me. So if I disappear like that, just take over until I come back, because I will be back.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute then, Jen, if you head out.
Yeah, you just got a nice little still photograph of you there.
And it's actually a good one, too.
Yeah, it is. It just looks like you're sitting there intently listening to me.
You'd be so happy with this photo. Anyway, but to get going with it, so you get all excited about this, right? And
Mhm.
when do you start really, really digging into it? I mean,
Probably about 10 years ago is when I really started. I wasn't pacified with what was being given to us in the TV shows, and the Monster Quest I thought was a great show, but it always just kind of came up a little short. It ended up causing me more questions than it answered, but that was good. That was good. Um, so I started delving into it and reading some books and looking more at more what physical evidence was out there that was actually being studied, like the track casts and Dr. Meldrum with, all of the morphology of the foot. And the more of that I saw, and the more track, Les Stroud had a big part in, with his Bigfoot series. Um, just, I'm always just like, I'm a sponge. I'm just always taking this stuff in, and I rely on my gut a lot, which has served me really well throughout life. So if something feels a little off, I kind of put that over here, and I'll be like, okay, I'll look at this some more later, but this one doesn't feel right. And then there's the others that, man, I just keep going back to, and it's like, and there's certain personalities out there that, rule YouTube as far as the stuff that we watch. And I have some of my favorites, and I think a lot of it is because they deal with a lot of people emailing in experiences. And even in an email, when you're listening to the way somebody writes something,
mhm.
I feel that I get a feel for, that sounds like embellishment to me, or yeah, this is going a little far, or that's a little too weird. Um, Not to discount the woo stuff, because I don't. Um, I don't talk about it a lot because it's such an unknown. And that's what makes it even more interesting to me. And I love the woo stuff. Um, but like typically when I have somebody that I'm interviewing or talking to, I try to stick to more of the nuts and bolts of a sighting or an encounter. Excuse me. And then, some years ago, I started hunting again, and I had a couple experiences while I was hunting. Now, I'm a very frustrated Bigfoot enthusiast because I have not seen him or her or them. Um, but a couple of experiences that happened to me while I was out hunting, and it didn't initially hit me as being that it could be related to it. It was odd. It was weird. It was unusual. But it wasn't until a couple of years after that happened that I kind of started putting the lines from A to B. And a lot of it came from listening to all these other experiences that some of these YouTubers, read the emails and all that. And I was like, holy crap, that was pretty dang close to what I had happened to me. And it was basically, I was hunting a piece of property that was um, in a neighborhood. I mean, it was there were quite a bit of space between houses, but it was still a neighborhood, and maybe 1,500 yards away from a school. Narrow piece of property, really really narrow but deep, and I did not have permission to hunt the property beside me. But it was such an interesting piece of property. It had pine trees, it had regular woods, it had this path that went through it, it had all kinds of tall grass, it had like a marshland through it, a little bit of a wetlands. And from where I would sit on the property that I was hunting, I could see where the deer were bedding down. I could see where all the grass was laid down. And one day it was pretty close to the end of hunting, and I set my shotgun down and I walked onto that other property. And I didn't want to get caught having a weapon, because then I could say, hey, I'm not hunting. I shouldn't have been on the property. I didn't have permission. But I walked about 50 yards into it. And when I got to the point where I could see the corner of the other house, I was like, okay, that's far enough. And I turned around and I started walking back to my hunting spot slowly. And I was just kind of taking in the whole lay of the land. And I heard footsteps behind me. And I was like, that's a landowner. And I kind of stopped. And when I stopped, the footsteps behind me stopped. And I made sure that I had my hands down at my side so you could see I wasn't carrying a weapon. I didn't have anything slung over my shoulder. And I was just waiting for him to tear into me. And I didn't say anything. So I was like, okay, I'm going to push my luck. So I kept walking. I started walking again. 1 or 2 steps into my stride, I started hearing it walking behind me again. I stopped again. It took 1 or 2 steps and it stopped. And then I was like, oh, I got a 12-point buck that's walking behind me, following me back to my stand. And I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. They don't follow you. And I was like, ooh, maybe I still have deer estrus on my hunting clothes, and it smells it. And I'm like, oh, great. He's going to mount me. So I started walking again, and again, I hear the footsteps starting behind me. And I just went into overload as far as excitement, because in my head, I knew it was just this massive buck behind me. And all I had to do was get around this deadfall to reach my shotgun. And I was already planning. I was like, I'm not going to turn my feet. I'm just going to turn at the waist. He's going to be standing right behind me, and I'm going to take the shot. And I reached over with my right hand to grab my shotgun, and I heard this voluminous, this massive exhale of air. And it kind of reminded me of, like, when you hear a horse do its snort and its whinny and all that, and it does the lip thing and all that. Kind of reminded me of being around a horse when it did that big exhale, because, I mean, it was voluminous. And man, I just whipped around. And as I whipped around, I was pulling up my shotgun, and there was freaking nothing there. Nothing. There wasn't a leaf moving. There wasn't a particle of dust. Nothing that I could see was disrupted. And all I heard was thump, thump. And I took 2 steps back into that property, because I knew that buck was going to be standing like 20 yards away from me, with a tree between us. And there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing was moving. There wasn't a twig on a branch or anything that was moving back and forth like it had been bumped into. And I was like, what in the hell? So it was the end of hunting, and, it was already starting to get dark, a little bit of twilight left. And I walked out of the woods, started walking down the tree line back to where my car is. And in the woods, off to my right-hand side, I hear something walking, so I'm looking for this big deer and never saw it, but it followed me 2/3 of the way back to my car. And I'm like, man, I'm coming back tomorrow. I'll get you. And, so that was pretty weird. And again, not until several years later, I start hearing all these experiences of people being paced in the woods, something following off to the side, and, something following behind them. And, I talked to some hunter friends of mine who are more experienced in the woods than I am. And they all look at me like, man, dude, you're nuts. A deer's not going to follow you back to your stand. They're not going to do it.
Did you happen to look at the ground when you were looking for them?
Honestly, I was looking at everything, but I can't say that I was actually looking for prints. I did, the next day when I went back, I do recall seeing a very deep imprint of a hoof. Not really in the area where it left me. So,
well, I asked because there's stories of Bigfoot like crawling on the ground like a spider.
Yeah.
like really
yeah.
close to the ground. So I didn't know if you looked down to see if you could see anything down there while you were out.
No, I really, at that point, I don't think I had heard about the spider crawl yet. And to be honest with you, I mean, even though this was still something that I was super interested in, I was not envisioning hunting in Southwest Michigan, 1,500 yards away from a school, 300 yards behind a house, in the corner of a cornfield. And, it just, Pacific Northwest, sure. Upper Peninsula of Michigan, yeah. Adirondacks, yep. Tennessee, Kentucky, sure. But Southwest Michigan, so then I ended up trying. At that time, I was trying to get my son interested in hunting. So he was, I don't know, 10 or 11. Took him out to a piece of farmland that the guy put on the DNR registry, where you could go in, hunt his land for free. You had to sign in and you had to sign out. Only a certain number of hunters allowed on each parcel of land at one time. And I took my son out there, and I had been out there before, but we hunted a different piece of property that was across the street. It was still his property, but it was a different unit. And we walked back there, and it was cold, but it was warm enough where things were kind of damp. Things were melting a little bit. And we got into this, I want to say like during the springtime or even into the summer, it might have been more of a swamp, because it was awfully mucky. A lot of reeds and stuff like that had been matted down, and they had some really old, really creepy looking, like old fashioned logging equipment that was back there. And set my son up. I moved over maybe 35 yards away from him. He was in perfect clear view of me, and he was facing towards this little valley. I was facing more into the swampy area. And we just got him set. I got to my place. I sat down, looked over, had a good clear view of him. And so I started looking off this way. I don't think I was sitting there 25, 30 minutes. And he comes up and he taps me on the shoulder, scared the hell out of me, because I didn't hear him. And he's like, "I want to go." And I was like, "Of course you do. You just want to get home, play video games, and do the same old crap." And I'm like, "No, go back over. We're not done yet." And he's like, "Nah, I don't like it here. I feel weird." And I'm like, "What do you mean you feel weird?" And he says, I don't know. I'm scared. I don't like it here." And so we ended up leaving. Because, I wanted him to learn how to hunt. I didn't want him to be there against his will and, kind of ruin it for him. So I went back there again, maybe a week later, same piece of property. And this is a completely different piece of property than I had at the first time I got huffed at. And I found this tree fall. Big old tree that had fallen over, still had a lot of the limbs and everything kind of draped over, and made this really nice deadfall. And I set my bucket down and sat behind it, and it was cold, and I kept looking out across the field, and about 300 yards away I started to see deer coming out. And there were 6 or 7 of them that came out, and they were just moseying down the trackway of the tree line. And so I was like looking at the clock, and I'm like, I don't know if they're going to get here in time, because hunting time was going to be over. And perfectly dead still, quiet, bitter cold. And all of a sudden, I get this massive breath of air behind me again. Just scared the hell out of me, because I literally thought there was like a horse came up behind me or something. And I mean, it didn't make any sense, but at that time, I mean, I'm on a piece of wooded land, and, deer or horse or, a cow or, something. And just this extremely voluminous, just massive breath of air behind me. And I don't remember hearing any footsteps afterwards or anything. And I mean, there was nothing behind me for 20, 25 yards. And I whipped around and there's nothing, absolutely nothing there. So I'm like, it's twice now. I've got that rush of air behind me, and it wasn't wind. It wasn't, I don't know what the hell it was, but the more and more I started digging deeper and deeper, the more this started coming out as like, holy crap. That makes a lot more sense now. I mean, if you can say it makes sense, because I mean, at that time you're kind of questioning everything about it. And again, Southwest Michigan, no Bigfoot in Southwest Michigan. So that was pretty much my experience, and then my son's experience there. And flash forward a few years, I start doing this show, and I end up working at a school. And at that school, I meet this guy. I had to go in and install. My boss asked me, he said, will you go down to his office and install this software on his computer? I said, sure. So I finished up what I was doing. I go down to his office and I install this software on his computer. And I said, hey, can I ask what this is? Because it looks like DVR software. And he said, well, yeah, pretty much. He says, I installed some cameras at my house and we've been having some problems out there. I assumed with kids, vandals or somebody trying to rob them. And so I installed this on, I got everything working, but I couldn't get his computer to communicate with the computer at home. So I had to go back to my boss and say, hey, you got to allow permission so that these two computers can talk. And then that was it. In his office, he had a poster of Patty, one of the iconic, stepping, and then it had a scope reticle on it. And I always just thought it was a joke. I thought either some kids brought it in, maybe he believed in Bigfoot and somebody was making fun of him, or he thought that Bigfoot ought to be shot, or I just thought it was a joke. Never really thought twice about it. Didn't want to ask him about it because I believed in Bigfoot and I didn't want to get in an argument with him saying that, you shouldn't have the poster up. So I end up, that was a part-time gig for me when I was working nights. So I ended up leaving the school. And I ended up running into this friend of mine, and he said, and I was actually going to a Dewey Lake Monster Conference, which was a Bigfoot sighting back in 1964 in Dowagiac, Michigan, which is very close to us. And he says, you really going to one of those? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, you need to talk to this guy. And I said, from the school? And he said, yeah. And I said, all right. I said, well, give him my number. Tell him if he wants to talk to me, he can talk to me. So I go to the conference and have a nice afternoon, and I get home that night and I get a phone call from this guy. And he's like, hey, I talked to so-and-so and he told me to give you a call. I said, yeah, what's going on? And he was really vague at first. And he kind of started talking about an experience he might have had. And then that was kind of it. And he's like, all right, I got to go. So we hang up. Later on that night, he sends me a text message and he goes a little deeper into it. Then later on that night, he sends me another text message and it's a little bit more. And the next morning I wake up and I got like 3 or 4 messages from him, and it's all going into this experience he had. So I got out of work that next day. I called him. I said, hey, look, dude, I said, we need to talk about this. It seems like you keep giving me a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and the more comfortable you're getting with me. And he's like, well, I just want to make sure that you're not going to be one of these guys that, makes fun of me or rolls your eyes or, uses it against me. And I'm like, no, not at all. So we end up having a really long conversation. He sends me some photographs that he had taken, and it was an incredible account. He ended up having one walk out in front of him. here in Southwest Michigan.
That is really cool. And on that note, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. You can finish the rest of the story. Stay tuned, everybody.
All right.
All right. Perfect. Good job. So now that we're on commercial break on the radio, why don't you tell everybody real quick about your radio show?
All right. Uncomfortable podcast. I've just next month, 14th of next month, will be a year old. Got 57 episodes out, plus, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 10 little bonus episodes. You can get it anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of the podcatchers. You can also find it at its landing spot at uncomfortable.transistor.fm. It has all the episodes there as well. And man, I'm just having an absolute ball with it. Talking to great people, getting not just Bigfoot stories, but hauntings and. Oh, I thought you were giving me a signal.
Damn,
excuse
this
me.
girl. This girl.
Yeah, hauntings, psychics, demonologist, priest in the Church of Satan. Jen and I did a show that wound up going almost 3 hours, so we split it into 2 parts. Got a lot of great.
It wasn't Bigfoot. It wasn't.
No,
Bigfoot.
it wasn't Bigfoot at all. So it's just been an absolute joy talking to these people, and the thing I like about it best is it just gives you such a different perspective to look at things from. I might not agree with it, and it might not be the way I'm looking at things, but I really think it opens your mind and lets you look at things from different perspectives and understand.
It's a good show. I really like it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Sarge.
I didn't want to miss that.
Go.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Hey, we're the She-Squatchers. Won't you check us out online at She-Squatchers.com? Right at the top of the page, you can find a link to our events page where you can see where we're going to be, where you can come and meet us in person. Come this spring, we're going to be in Washington State, and then we're going to be in North Carolina. And I hear there's going to be like 20 to 40,000 people at that event. So that's going to be a really good time.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have us speaking outside because it's too big of a crowd to hear us inside of a building. So that'll be really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then we're going to be back in Washington State again in the month after that, which is June. So
do you guys
really
need
excited.
Do you guys need like a luggage boy or something? Somebody to carry your stuff around for you?
Yeah.
I mean,
That would be great. That would be great.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Arrange for our rooms. Make sure that we have our champagne and strawberries.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
just
I'll draw you each a bath.
You see, there's Tammy right there. She was trying to hook you into getting us drinks again.
Hey, you've made it when you get to your hotel room and there's champagne and strawberries in there. That's all I
Yeah.
have to say.
That hasn't happened for me yet.
Well, that's because you don't have a luggage boy.
We need a luggage boy.
I guess we do. No, I've come to the hotel room and there was like gift bags with chocolates and snacks and all kinds of really cool things and a card and a welcome, and that was cool. And then last summer we got there and they had made up these big cartoon caricatures of us. And Tammy got there before we did, and so they're standing outside holding it up.
Like a celebrity.
Did you guys have paparazzi out there too? I mean,
No, darn it.
We didn't, but they told us, like, because the event was sold out and people line up outside of the convention center waiting for them to open the door. And there was like 2,000, it was sold out at 2,000 seats. And they said, you want to come early or you could get, mauled coming in through the crowd. And, we got there early, but we weren't like super early. And Tammy pulls up and Jenna and I jump out with our bags to go rolling into the event center. And they're like, the She-Squatchers are here. That's them. And we're like, run.
It's so weird. It's so strange to have that happen.
Well, you know, when I first met you guys up in Ann Arbor at that Michigan Bigfoot conference, I had two separate people come up to the table. One was a couple, one was I guess they were both couples, and the one was pretty early on in the day, and they basically just walked up and told me that they drove 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours, because I was there supporting my show, and they wanted to talk to me.
Nice.
And I was like, I was gobsmacked. My son had gone with me to help, and he literally like had to elbow me, and he's like, dude, you got to say something. You know, don't just sit there and look at him. And it was just the most, I guess, humbling at first, but to think that somebody took that much time out of their day to drive someplace to meet me in person, that was like one of the first things that really hit me of, man, I might be doing the right thing here. I might be on the right path. So that was really cool. It's a weird feeling, and it's very humbling. So
It is very cool. It's very cool. It is really strange for us too, you know, but we enjoy it. It's fun. And we always enjoy meeting the people at the events, and going out and bigfooting in those areas too is also like a highlight of what we like to do when we're on the road. So yeah, good times.
yeah,
Now,
I'm just now getting my feet wet into the whole conference culture. So
well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Little birdie told me that you might be doing a conference this year.
I am. Back to the Dewey Lake Monster, 1964, the summer of 64. I think it started in June on the south end of Dewey Lake in Sister Lakes. Sister Lakes is a weird amalgam in Dowagiac. It's like it's this weird little piece of property that like covers 3 different counties. They all kind of converge in it, but so they call it Sisters Lake. And there's, I think, 5 small resort lakes there. And they ended up having an entire summer of sightings. And national news picked it up. It got quite a bit of popularity. And then there was a local alcohol distributor who put out $1,000 bounty on this creature. And the next thing they knew, that town was just inundated with truckloads of hunters and monster hunters and everything, and they couldn't keep up with it. So they insisted that the distributor take down his offer. And the rest of that summer, they struggled with quite a big influx of people coming into that town. There was actually one of the businesses in the town came up with this monster hunting kit that I think you got 1 arrow, like a butterfly net, and something else like a bucket or something they were selling like hotcakes. I mean, people were buying it up. The community really embraced, and still till this day, 50 years later, still embraces the whole idea behind it. And so Sister Lakes Brewery is who I'm partnering with there in Dowagiac, and we're going to have a conference September 10th, and it's going to be called Bigfoot and Brews. So I've got Ron Moorhead is on the slate. I have and the neat thing about it is it's kind of going to be a uncomfortable podcast greatest hits. So the rest of the speakers, everybody that is going to be speaking, will have been on and a guest on my show. Ron was on it, so it's gonna be an amalgam of people that like to talk about it, want to learn about it. We're gonna have vendors there, and it should be a great day. So my first dipping of my toes into running an event. So I got some really good people around me, and So hopefully it'll be sustainable and we keep doing it for years to come. And next year I'll have a little extra money I can throw at you guys and have you guys come down.
We would love that. We love Michigan.
And there's rumors there that there's the possibility of another expedition to the UP, possibly piggybacking on the backside of that conference.
Heard about that expedition
This year?
Yes.
There's another expedition this year.
You're snarling your face.
I want to go.
Me too.
I'd love for you guys to come. Yeah, I'm in talks.
Expedition this time.
What's that?
So I want to stay for the whole expedition this time. We had to leave halfway through last time.
Yeah, we're in talks with a couple of the main people that had that expedition last year. They're super excited about my event, and there's considerable talks about putting a piggyback expedition right on the. So my show would be over on Saturday. Sunday we would leave for the UP. So it's still in the talks, but there's might be a good chance that somebody who was filming that last expedition might as well be involved again.
Jason Kenzie, we have to go.
Sorry, who?
Jason Kenzie is the
we have to go. If Jason Kenzie is there, we have to go.
So, as well as one of my previous guests, Cortland Gordon. He is a young filmmaker, and they're very interested in going along. I spoke with some of the main players in getting this all put together, and they thought it would be a great idea if we had multiple teams of cameramen so that there would be a suitable camera with every group that.
Good idea.
So.
Yeah,
that's exciting stuff.
First of all, because you've done amazing and you've been doing so much, and it sounds like it's going so well for you, and it just keeps going up and up and up. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. Slow growth, I think is the best with anything. If you get too big too fast, things tend to burn out, and this has been a nice progressive incline in listeners and interest, and so I'm just trying to do it all the right way, and it's panning out so far, so I'm thrilled with it.
That sounds great.
And like I said, we get to doing this kind of stuff, we get to meet great people, and just like you guys, I mean,
thanks.
It's a terrific deal. I'm really, really very thankful that I followed my gut. Because this is something that I could have easily talked myself out of a million times. Oh, it's too expensive to get the equipment to record. Oh, it's too time consuming. Oh, everybody's going to think it's crap. Nobody's going to listen. And that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm really excited about it.
Love it.
So, but yeah, back to Bigfoot. That guy in Southwest Michigan, he ended up having one come walk out in front of him, and he was there with his dad, his brother-in-law, and a family friend. All four of those guys hunt together every year. So there were other witnesses there. 3 of the 4 of them all had an experience of some sort, either seeing it walking through the swamp, coming out into the clearing. The main guy that I interviewed, he said when he saw it come through the pathway into the clearing, it literally lifted its arm up and smacked a tree limb with its forearm to break it off instead of ducking under it. And he also said that, interestingly enough, he said that it was stomping like, he said it reminded him of one of his kids when they were having a tantrum when they were a little kid. He said it seemed like it was obviously trying to get their attention, like to get the hell out, So, but then interestingly enough, their actual home, their homestead, is about maybe 35 minutes away from where they had the sighting. And 2 of his daughters had a visual sighting on their homestead property. And I guess the long and the short of it is, when we were talking about the woo aspect of things, Um, both of the daughters wanted to get in on the interview, and I sat across from them. I actually got invited to their home, so I was sitting there in front of them. I saw their eyes as they were telling it to me, and I saw the trepidation in their lips, and as they were telling it. And the one daughter had it walk out in front of. She was getting ready to go to school. Her dad was a teacher. She was in the truck with him to get ready to go to school. He forgot something, went in the house, and as he went back into the house, it stepped out in front of the truck into the headlights. And she said it was so close to the truck that the headlights barely just lit up the upper thighs. But she said it bent down and looked into the front windshield at her. And she said all she saw were red eyes. And he came back out. And when she saw the light from the door open, she looked over. And when she looked back, it was gone. And when he got in the truck, she was just screaming, go, 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 go. And he was like, I'm the teacher. Even if we're late, you're not going to get in trouble. And she's like, just go, just go, just go. So he turned out the driveway onto the road, and they got about a quarter of a mile down the road. And he's like, what is wrong with you? What's going on? And then she told him what she saw. And he whipped the truck back around, went back to the house. That was the reason why they were putting up the security cameras at the house, is because that daughter and then his oldest daughter had eyes looking at her from a little tree line that separated his property from the next door neighbors. And so, yeah, it was footprints were photographed on both pieces of property. Pretty compelling footprints. At the house, the strata was pretty dry when they got it, so there wasn't a real deep indentation, but the outline of the foot was clear, and it was massive. He wore a size 11, and it dwarfed it both in length and breadth. So, and what was really intriguing to me, what I noticed right off the bat, was the position of the big toe. Excuse me. The big toe was splayed out more to the side and almost down a little bit more than, like where our toes are positioned. So, I mean, everything about it was really, really intriguing. And it's my most popular episode I've done to date. It's the most downloaded. So, I'd encourage anybody to listen to that one, because it's an amazing story. And he actually, at the time we recorded, he asked me if I could alter his voice, because my listening audience at the time was local, just getting started, and he was afraid somebody was going to recognize it. Well, since then, he has now agreed to possibly be a speaker at my event in September. And that'd be an amazing story to have him tell in front of a crowd of people. So, but then my son, he the poor guy. I mean, he grew up with me his whole life, and my interests kind of spilled over to both of them, my kids, and my son's a geologist up in the middle of state Michigan, and he got called up to the area of Petoskey to do some geology work. And there was a very large 3-lettered campground that ought to be pretty obvious that was doing an expansion. So he had to go up there and he had to do some ground testing. And it was him and 2 drillers. And they were originally told that they were going to be able to get their drill rig into the woods to do this work. Well, when they got there, they found that everything was so overgrown, there was no way they could get the rig into it. So they had to leave the rig in the fire lane, and then they had to take hand augers and go into the wooded area, find the GPS coordinates, and they had to do their borings by hand. Well, my son sends me a picture of this tree that's laying over on its side with a root ball at the bottom of it. And he says, I just got hit by this tree. And I was like, wait a minute, what? This is a text message. And I was like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, what do you mean you got hit by this tree? And he says, this tree just got pushed over while I was standing next to it, 5 feet away from it. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he's like, no, Dad, I'm serious. He said, and the branches hit me as it was falling down. So I started asking him, I said, like, well, is the ground super wet? Is it like, was it flooded? Could the roots have been loose? Is it windy? All kinds of questions. He's like, no. He's like, there's a little bit of moisture in the ground. The dirt is dark, but he's like, it's not soaking wet. And I'm like, oh man, just be careful out there, And again, I'm not thinking about Bigfoot. By this time, I'm like, how often have you ever stood next to a tree and have it fall over next to you? So that was kind of weird. So then they had to move down a straight line so many yards, whether it was like 200 or 300 yards. I think the total path was 200 yards. So they moved halfway down the path and they had to do another boring. Just about by the time they got to that second spot, one of the drillers turns around and says, did you hear that? Was that your phone? And my son said, no, it wasn't the phone. The other driller said, well, it sounded like Siri, like a woman's voice. Did your phone go off in your pocket? Because it was mumbled. And he said, no. And by this time, my son is starting to be kind of, what's going on here? And so all three of them heard it. And the one driller said that it sounded like a kid's voice kind of mumbling in the woods. And the other guy thought it was a woman. And so they did their second boring. And then they moved on to the last point. And when they got down to the last point, they set down all their equipment and heard way back where the tree had been pushed down. They heard this massive rustling of the underbrush, like being shook. And when they turned around, my son said they turned around just in time to see like the bushes and everything just kind of stop shaking. But they all three of them heard like somebody's like grabbing the brush and just shaking it like crazy. So a little later on, he calls me and we start having a conversation about this. And I'm talking about the tree, and then he tells me about the mumbly voices in the woods. And I'm like, well, how close were you to like actual campers and everything? And he's like, this is a piece of property that is all wooded. They haven't cleared anything off of it. It's considerable distance from where any of the campers are. And he's like, man, this is weird, and then they get to the other end of it and they see this thrashing of all the underbrush. And I told him, I said, dude, you're not one for BSing your old man, but I said, you realize that like everything you've just told me about this is like textbook, put check marks in three of the most common things. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm telling you the truth. And so he was kind of shaken up after that. And so as a family, we're kind of frustrated as far as our Bigfoot experiences because we haven't seen anything, but all the indications kind of want to point that way. So, and could there be other explanations for it? Sure. I don't know what causes a tree to fall over on its own, but I'm sure it happens throughout the world every day. But then you couple that with, within the same hour, hearing mumbled voices off in the distance, and then seeing a thrashing of brush back where the original incident took place. I don't know. Kind of weird. So.
Sounds squatchy to me.
It does. And that just fuels me even more. And there's so many good YouTube channels out there with people that either have doing their own investigations, or they're covering. I really like the one guy out of Canada, Justin. He runs Mountain Beast Mysteries. He a lot of times he tackles a lot of the historical accounts, things that were in the newspapers, Ape Canyon and Mount St. Helens and all that stuff. So I think if you keep your mind open and you keep a good bit of skepticism, but just kind of take it all in, I think you start to get a better perspective on what's out there. I mean, something's leaving the footprints. Meldrum, I think, has proved beyond any reasonable doubt that something is leaving those prints, and he's become adept enough to be able to tell when something's been faked and when something's real. What is it that's leaving the footprints? I don't know. My personal belief, I think this is something that is much closer to us than it is an ape. And that's just my gut. So many of the reports that you hear, the things that they do, different personality traits that they exhibit, I think put them in a class that's much closer to us than just being a wood ape. I know it's easier for people to wrap their head around the fact that it would be an ape, rather than to have to consider another human that would possibly be living in the woods free and not paying taxes and not having to pay for water, and the implications of that. I can see where people would want to keep it an ape, but personally, I don't think so. So, but yeah, it's just, I absolutely love it. I just do. There's, I'm going to be 57 coming up in June, and I have yet to have anything like really hit me and go, man, I might have been wasting my time. I might have been wasting a lot of effort here, And then when you see people like Meldrum who have been embroiled in it for as many years as he is, and obviously there's a paycheck involved with it. So, I mean, I get that, but Ron Moorhead, 50 some years we've been doing this, and the stories don't change. And, I don't think people are stupid. I don't think they're crazy. Sure, there's some people that are jumping on the bandwagon and making stuff up. Undoubtedly, you're going to have that with anything. But the vast number of these reports and everything, I just don't think people are making it up. So, and they're a bit smarter than we are.
Yes, for sure. We are coming to the end of the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you online if they would like to reach out to you.
Okay. Yeah. Uncomfortable Podcast has a Facebook page, Instagram. It's Uncomfortable Podcast 65, I believe, is the Instagram. Those are pretty much the two that we use. Just look me up. I'm available on all the podcatchers everywhere, and I'd love to have you listen. And thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's been an absolute joy seeing you guys all over again, and hopefully we get to cross paths in person.
I hope so too. And you know what? I just want to make one announcement real quick. We have the She-Squatchers were featured in a documentary that came out just this last weekend. You can find it on Vimeo under Searching for Sasquatch Chapter 3. Searching for Sasquatch Chapter 3 on Vimeo.
And so I'm actually in it too. I got like 3 seconds.
Yeah, I saw you. Bye, everybody.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, girls.
See you next week. Good night, everyone.